What's up, guys? If you're new here, my name is Dominique, but you can call me Dom, and welcome to Faith Family Homestead. We are outside in my hoop house, and my girls, you can't really tell right now, but they just added some leaves to these beds because we have a lot of fallen leaves everywhere, so we just threw them onto these beds. But what we did do is I had Anaya and I had a bunch of potatoes that had sprouted that we grew last year inside the garden, and Anaya came out here and planted them into that last raised bed, and they've already started to sprout. But the next 2 days, I believe, it's going to go down to 28 degrees both days. It just keeps getting lower and lower the closer we get to the days. At first it had said just 32, then it went down to 30, and now it's saying 28 degrees. So I came out here since I won't be able to get out in the garden for the next 2 days since it will probably be too cold. And I'm going to get some garden work done. If you're not familiar with me gardening last year, I got really busy in the summer, like unexpectedly, and went on like a missionary trip and then started some things at church and stuff like that. And so I kind of, my garden kind of fell to the wayside. And I didn't really do much gardening, managing and keeping up with the weeds. So now that it's cooled down, I've been doing a lot of coming out here, and I did do a small fall garden, even though I didn't think I was going to. And so you see I have broccoli here, cabbages, I have some beets growing out in the garden and carrots and stuff like that. Very small scale fall garden, and I love it. I'm not as busy in the winter time, but the reason why I'm out here today is, well, one, I wanted to check on the potatoes and then just make sure that I close this hoop house. But then two was I want to do soil testing. I've been here for 2 years now, and October made 2 years, and I have not done a soil test. When we first started, I just put down topsoil from my local nursery, compost. We have a composting facility here in Charleston, and so it was topsoil, compost mixed together with peat moss. I mixed in Azomite, worm castings, and I did add fertilizer and stuff like that. And then like this past spring I did add fertilizer, but I have not done a soil test. So I'm going to take the time, and South Carolina, Clemson State University does soil testing where I can send in my soil to a local ag company for, I think it's $6 each soil sample. I'm going to do 3 different soil samples. I'm going to do one of just the compost that I'm getting, because we have just been in our garden where we are connecting beds to make them longer. I am just getting compost, and so I'm going to do 1 bag of just the compost that we've been getting to get that soil tested. I'm going to do the log raised beds in just different spots. That's going to be 1 bag. And then the 3rd bag is just going to be my raised bed garden with all of the different beds. I'm just going to pick random beds and mix it all together, and we're going to send off those 3 soil testing. And I have 3 Ziploc bags, and we're gonna get started. So this is the perfect example where my son combined these 2 raised beds, and in the middle we just added straight compost. This is compost from our local landfill. They are certified organic, and so you can use this in certified organic gardening, and I've used this as long as I've been gardening. Even when we had our previous house, I use compost, and I'm sure it changes with each batch because they do get food from local restaurants and from schools and stuff like that. But this whole batch, all of this row, has come from the same, it was from the same yard. So I'm just going to get some soil and put it straight into here, because this whole middle is just filled with compost. On the beds, it's mixed with compost and other things, but not this. And they told me to get about 2 cups of soil. I forgot to bring a pen out here. And I'm going to label this as bag number 1, because this is just compost. And that's our first bag. like I said, the reason why I'm testing this is because I haven't added anything in here. These middle beds, to connect them, is just straight compost, since I want to know what nutrients this is missing, so that I will have to fertilize these middle beds differently than I would have to fertilize, say, the beds right next to it, because it has a completely different mix. And when I was reading about soil testing, it said, you know, areas that kind of have the same soil is where, you know, you want to test together. And this has a completely different soil because it's not mixed with anything. Okay. You guys can see behind me that all of my log raised beds are still covered. So I'm going to have to uncover a spot from each bed, get a scoop of soil, mix it together, and to get my 2 cups. And then if I have any extra, I'll just throw it back inside the raised beds. I know for a fact that I tried to, when I was doing these raised beds, the compost was the same, the topsoil is the same, you know. I also had added peat moss, vermiculite, perlite. I did add fertilizer in it, but I'm just going to take a mix from each bed, and that will be my second test. That will be log raised bed, and we'll get that soil tested as well. So I got my second sample, and this is from all the log raised beds except for the one that still has asparagus in it. And I just got a scoop from each bed. I'm just gonna add it in here. You can see this is much, it's light in color, way lighter than, like, let me see if I can show you side by side. So this is straight compost, and like, so this is compost, and then this is the compost topsoil. It is very on the, it feels like more on the sandy side. I'm just going to be very interested to get this soil testing back. Like I said, I've never done one before. Ooh. But it's going to be interesting. Anaya, can you get me a marker? Permanent marker? Me trying to do this with one hand. Okay. Let's see. Now that you can see, this is log raised bed, this is straight compost. The compost is more on the woodier side. And I know that it's not high in nitrogen because every time I've tried to use it as just, well, one, it has larger wood pieces in it, and it does say that online that you should mix it in with the existing soil. But the reason why I'm not with these middle raised beds is because there's no existing soil in these middle raised beds to connect the 2 beds, because these were pathways, and in order to fill them, I didn't want to get topsoil, because topsoil is just a top layer of soil from like yards and stuff, and it was just going to bring a lot of weed seeds. And so my plan was just to fill this to the top with the compost. So on the front of this, I'm going to write, what was this? This was log beds, and I'm going to write number 2. And on this one, I'm going to write compost number 1. Okay. Last, it's so interesting when I moved here, we're going to do the last bed, which is going to be, I'm going to get different spots in these raised beds around me. It's so different that, what I was going to say is, it's so much different living here. Although there's clay in certain areas, when we dig down, a lot of the soil here is more sandy, whereas when I lived closer to Charleston area, it was very heavy clay. And there are some clay spots here, but the top layer I would say is more sandy than clay. I've been so impressed with these cardboard. A lot of the beds along the fence, the cardboard stayed in place, and when I pulled back the cardboard, you can see where it had killed the weeds, and so I was really happy about that. We've been going through the garden and basically just trying to, I'm trying to get it prepared for next year, and so that does mean weeding and trying to cover the beds so more weeds don't come back. And you can see right here where some cardboard had flew off and stuff like that, so we'll have to re-look at those spots. Like that spot was really weedy, and so it was harder to dig than compared to other spots where the cardboard had stayed on the beds. And when I did pull back the soil, I could see even on the log raised beds, I could see that there were some worm activity, and so that was really exciting for me to know that worms are doing their job underneath the soil. Did I do it? I lost the pen? Oh no. Okay. This I'm going to label as number 3, and it's going to be, what are these called? I have compost, log raised beds. I'll just do wood beds. And I just took a sample from one bed against the fence, one on the left side, one on the right, or 2 on the right, 2 on the left, 2 on the right, 1 against the fence, and then I took 1 from this in-ground bed. And again, very let's see, very on the sandier side. Instead of pouring it, I'm just gonna try and scoop it. Yay! It's so crazy. I was expecting the soil to be way more wet than it was, just because it's rained really, really hard. Like some parts on our property has poor drainage and it's really low, and they were like, what are those called? Not puddles, they were bigger than puddles. Anyway, I don't know. But we have our samples here. The ones from the log raised beds, let's see if I can show you. I'm going to open them. The ones from the log raised beds actually looks lighter. I'm going to...
That one looks lighter, that one looks darker.
I'm going to show you the 3 colors because it goes from like dark to medium to light. Okay, so this is just compost. This was from the raised beds that we just did, and this is from the log raised beds. And you can see the ones from the log raised beds is way browner than this one. Okay, now that we have our 3 samples of soil, I'm so excited. You might be wondering why I didn't test these beds. I didn't test these beds because these beds, or the ones inside my hoop house, I didn't test. Is basically the same reason why I didn't test these, is because not only do they have stuff planted in them, and these are seedlings. I don't want to like disturb any baby seedlings. I have stuff planted in my hoop house, but also it's because it's the same like mixed soil mixture in there, and so like if this says like it's like really low on nitrogen or something like that, I will just go ahead and fertilize these and amend these the same way as I've done my other beds, just because these beds are, the top majority of it is the compost from that landfill. I did at the bottom add in leaves last year. I added in bag soil, so that makes it a little different. And then we planted, and then it got really low, and then we just recently added in about like 3 more inches of that compost, which is the same compost as that middle raised bed. So that's why I don't need to test these beds. And then the same thing for the beds inside the hoop house. It was leaves, it was logs, stuff like that inside, and then we added in compost, majority of compost, that went down, and then we just added in more compost, and then I added in, before I planted, bag soil. So I don't feel like I need to get those beds. My girls are working on adding leaves, which I said that, to all of the raised bed, or all of the beds that are empty. So like that one right there, girls, that's empty. Yeah, it's empty. Because leaves are really good. In my old garden, I did not struggle. The reason why I didn't take soil tests and never done soil tests is because I used to compost in place, which basically what that means is I would just bury all my food scraps. And so I knew that I had a high organic matter. I never fertilized in my old garden because I knew that it was high in nutrients. With me, what is it called, composting in place, which I would just dig like a hole in different parts of the garden and just bury my food scraps, and that was feeding my soil. Well, with these it's different because I do not bury my food scraps anymore. I barely put any kind of food scraps in here. If we have a dead chicken, we may bury it in here. We have buried dead, like if we've received dead chickens in the mail, we buried them inside here, but for the most part we do not add any food in here like I do. And so the organic matter that I'm getting is either like right now when I'm adding leaves and then they break down from like leaf mold, leaf mulch, stuff like that, or if I'm bringing in soil or adding fertilizer. We do have compost worms, and we do have rabbits, and rabbit manure you can add straight on into the garden because it's considered a cold manure, but we don't have that many rabbits in order to do, we don't have that many rabbits in order to, at this moment, fertilize all of my beds with rabbit manure. It would be great if we can. So what I've been doing is having my worms sit underneath my rabbit manure and hoping that the worms can turn that into faster compost and make it like bulkier. Because I've been adding leaves and stuff like that, it's just easier and it won't fly away. I've struggled before in the past where I've covered my beds with leaves and then it got really windy and then just blew away, which defeated the whole purpose of trying to cover them with anything. So anyway, enough blabbering. I'm gonna get these 3 bags of soil into the mail. I'm gonna get these 3 bags of soil into the mail with my check, and I'll have to do a part 2 when the test results come back, and then you'll see me and how I can fertilize my beds, because I'm going to, granule fertilizer takes so much longer. It's a slower release than if I was to wait into the spring to fertilize. Like if I am like low on nitrogen, I would want to do the granule fertilizer now, cover the beds, and then in spring do some more fertilizer, as well as just like fish. I have like fish fertilizer, which is a quicker release because it's liquid. Anyway, so get this off and I'll have to see you guys in my next video. Bye.